Hello everyone! In this video, I'm going to be reading the second story from the Tales from the Calamity. I've already read the first one, where we followed Merve Blufesven. You can find that one either up in the iCard or in the description down below. This second installation is going to follow Nanamo in the story named The Sultana's 7. Nanamo watched from her private terrace as the immortal flames filed out of Ul'Namo. The host left the city via the Gate of Thal, an egress symbolizing passage into the afterlife, in hope of cheating death upon the battlefield. Crowds had gathered for the occasion, their boisterous cheers resounding through the Sultanate, but Nanamo did not hear them. She stood transfixed before the balustrade as Rauban put his spurs to his courser, and there she remained long after the dust had settled in the rearguard's wake. She had steeled herself for this moment, but when it finally came, she found that her courage had deserted her all the same. Suddenly, the reality of her isolation was only too plain. I am alone. May the gods grant me strength. As the days went by, the weight of responsibility and uncertainty began to tell. Nanamo's nights were sleepless. Not even her favorite dishes would pass her lips, and her round Lalafell cheek took on a hollow cast. Sure enough, despite the best ministration of her ladies-in-waiting, her health began to fail. It became a ghost of herself, and her duties went untended. Whenever a difficulty presented itself, she would invariably think, "If only Rauban was here," cursing her own weakness even as the thought took shape. They knew very well that the famed General Rauban's place was with the host at the Cardinal Flats. It was his duty to lead his men into battle against the 7th Imperial Legion. "I shall soon be 6 and 10 summers old. I cannot rely upon others forever. Sooner or later, I must stand on my own 2 feet. I only hope I have the strength." Another meal came and went untouched. Taking her leave of the dining hall, Nanamo glanced apologetically at the silent shadow that was Pippin Tarpin, adoptive son of Rauban, and officer of the Immortal Flames. The earnest young soldier remained at his side at his father's behest, and trusted with her care in the Flames General's absence. Pippin would never admit it, dutiful as he was, but Nanamo knew that he would sooner be fighting beside his comrades at Cardinal. He could not help but feel responsible for denying him his wish. And for what? Though Pippin was his father's son, it was plain to both of them that it was the father that she needed. And so the days dragged on, each fading into the next, until the hour of reckoning came at last. "Words from Mordona, Your Grace! The battle is joined!" Nanamo was in the fragrant chamber, holding private audience with Thencred of the Circle of Knowing, when Pippin burst in with his hiding. A weak, "I see," was all she could manage in response. While Pippin strove to hide his disappointment at this tepid utterance, Thencred was quick to make his feelings known. "Begging your pardon, Your Grace, but I had hoped for something a little more rousing." Since agreeing to serve as an advisor to the Sultanate, the self-proclaimed bard had made himself at home at court, becoming ever more irreverent in the process. "When last I looked, your people had need of you. What could a powerless puppet like me possibly do?" Nanamo snapped back, immediately regretting her petulance. The bard was not discouraged, however, and responded with uncharacteristic force. "You are not powerless, Your Grace. You can pray for your sheer salvation." Prayer, she thought. Has it really come to that? But of course it had. Even as they spoke, Dalamud drew closer. According to Archon Louisois, only by the power of the 12 could the lesser moon be returned to the heavens, and the coming of the 7th umbral era forestalled. And only by the prayers of the faithful could the power be summoned forth. It was to allow the summoning ritual to proceed unhindered that the soldiers of the Orsian Alliance, Rauban amongst them, now fought at Cardinal. Thencred went on, his voice taking on a gentler tone. "If you pray, so too will the people. and the combined strength of their faith shall bear their plea for Eorzea's salvation unto the heavens. A moment passed in silence. If praying is all I can do, then I will do it with all my heart. Composing herself once more, she nodded, rose from her seat, and turned her steps toward Arsaneth Ossuary. Upon arriving at the temple, Pippin helped Nanamo to her knees and stood guard as he prayed. On the far side of the city, at Milvaneth's sacrarium, Thingrid was doing the very same, she knew. O God of my forefathers, deliver us from destruction. O God of my forefathers, bring Rauban safely back to me. A few hours into the vigil, chaos erupted. The ossuary shook violently, as if struck by a giant fist, prompting Pippin to draw close as the masonry fell about them. Terrified screams filled her ears, but Nanamo did not give into panic. In defiance of the tumult around her, she prayed with all her being. Her determination was soon rewarded. The stone plinth bearing the mark of the Dusk Trader began to glow. Moments later, a pillar of light burst forth from its surface, enveloping the image of Thal that stood upon it and illuminating every corner of the hall. In that instant, Nanamo felt the presence of the divine. Even as he basked in the sensation, a familiar voice echoed in her mind. Let Eorzea be born anew, it said. It was was, he thought, and knew no more. Nanamo awakened to find herself laying prone on the ossuary's smooth stone floor. Footfalls rang out all about her. From the corner of her eye, she saw Pippin rise to one knee, seemingly struggling to shake off the self-same torpor which gripped her. For a time, she remained still, content to gaze up at the stone plinth. Its divine light had faded, she noted dimly. A shrill yell brought her back from the reverie. Riders! At the Sapphire Avenue! They're headed this way! Consternation swept over Pippin's face. Your Grace, we cannot linger. Let us return to the palace at once. I will not hide while my people suffer. The answer rose to her lips unbidden, with a swiftness that surprised even her. Rising to her feet, she surveyed her surroundings. Robed figures were scrambling hither and thither, bearing precious tomes and artifacts away, presumably to safety. At the heart of the bustle, a small yet commanding figure was barking out orders. Nanamo recognized him as Mumu Ipo, High Priest of the Order of Nalthal and Master of the Thaumaturge's Guild. The riders cannot be allowed to defile the ossuary, the man fairly screamed. Incinerate anyone foolish enough to come near. These words set Nanamo's blood to roiling. And you call yourself a man of the cloth? Checking her fury, she addressed all present. Our citizens are in the grip of fear. They but want for a voice of reason to restore them to their senses. Who amongst you will aid me? Pippin stepped forward, as Nanamo knew he would. Though I am but a poor substitute for my father, I live only to serve you, my Sultana. Pray command me as you see fit. Next came Papashan of the Sultan's Warren, followed by 5 thaumaturges of the Guild, Lalafel's all and brothers beside. No more answered the Sultana's call, however. Only 7, he lamented, as he took stock of the volunteers. But they will suffice. They must. With gritted teeth, Nanamo stepped out onto the stricken street of Ul'dah. Of their own accord, her hastily assembled escort formed a protective ring around her, and together they trudged through the smoke and rubble. No matter where they looked, her eyes were met with scene of carnage. A girl cried over the charred body of her mother. A man laid moaning, his legs crushed beneath the tons of stone. Their plight wrenched her heart, but she could not stop for them. First she had to quell the unrest, else there would be no lasting relief. I will return for you all, I promise. As Nanamo's band reached Emerald Avenue, the mob of riders came into view. Shops and homes had been ransacked in his wake, the occupants fleeing for their life. Undaunted, Nanamo forged onward, to within earshot of the advancing rabble, where she stood, took a deep breath, and set about the task. Papashan? I must have their attention. Nodding, the elderly paladin produced a blinding flash that staggered some of the riders. Many, however, continued their rampage, oblivious. Thaumaturges, light up the sky! In unison, the 5 Lalafell brothers let loose a warning barrage of spell overhead. Most impressive among them was the conflagration unleashed by the brother with the bandaged face. Those rioters who failed to take notice before did so now. Satisfied, Nanamo turned to Pippin. "Lend me your back." With a booming voice that belied her size, Nanamo addressed the rebel. "Heed me, my beloved citizens," she began. "The realm lies upon the brink of the 7th umbral era. Yet so long as we live, we must not forget our compassion. Now is not the time to take from your neighbor, but to proffer him the hand of succor. The brave men and women of the immortal flames risked their lives that we might go on with ours. Would you have them return to an Ul'Namo that has torn itself apart?" Looks of shame manifested upon their begrimed faces. "I ask that you be strong, given not to fear and despair. If we join hands in common cause, there is no hardship we cannot overcome. Together, let us tend the wounds of our nation, of our shared home." Hearing these heartfelt words from the Sultana, the madness began to melt from the rioters' eyes, to be replaced by the gleam of reason. Soon after, a semblance of order returned to the city, and organized relief efforts commenced in earnest. Some days later, the remnant of the immortal flame truckled back into Ul'Namo. Entering the city by way of the Gate of Nald, wounded and weary though the soldiers were, they yet had homes to which they might return. In the midst of rebuilding, Nanamo issued a decree stripping Mumu-Ipo of all official titles and accompanying privileges. Though such an act would ordinarily have been beyond her authority, it was made possible owing to a clever maneuvering on Pippin's part. Evidence of rampant corruption was found with the high priest in his midst, and his order had no choice but to abide to the Sultana's will. In place of the incarcerated Mumu-Ipo, the 5 Lalafellin brothers were made joint masters of the Tomaters Guild. In the months and years that followed, Nanamo often revisited the events of that fateful day. "I am not powerless," she would remind herself. "There are things that even a puppet might achieve. If she could do her duty as a sultana in the midst of the calamity, she could surely carry out the tasks to come." Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more Final Fantasy XIV lore content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And it would be lovely if you could comment and give this video a thumbs up, because that really helps with the algorithm. And if you want something to watch right now, maybe check out one of the videos on the screen. But whatever you end up doing, I hope you have a lovely day.